The best videos always begin with a disclaimer. In this video, I will be relaying my experience with psychedelic mushrooms. I don't show myself taking anything, and I'm not currently under the influence or in possession of any illegal drugs. This is not meant to promote anything. This is not a tutorial. I'm just sharing my trip. So with that, hold on to your hats, my friends, 'cause this shit's wild. Magic mushrooms contain a compound called psilocybin that, when ingested, is broken down into psilocin, which increases serotonin activity and binds to receptors in your brain, causing the trip effects. Hallucinations, euphoria, altered perception of time and space, etc., etc. People have been taking shrooms for thousands of years. Many cultures use them in religious rituals and ceremonies in order to facilitate the spiritual journey and allow themselves to communicate with deities. Mayans, Aztecs, all kinds of Native Americans, like, it was a thing. It still kind of is, it's a thing. And that is what drew me in about them. I was in a pretty bad funk before my trip. Just like trying to figure out my life and what I want. Generally unsatisfied and lost, very, very depressed. I had a lot of questions and things to sort out from within. And with being someone who has experimented with psychedelics in the past, it had been weighing on my mind for a while that I wanted to do some assisted soul searching. So I really wasn't trying to just get high and trip out here, which, I mean, you do you if that's what you want, hey, have fun. But I ultimately had a higher purpose going into this. So I knew that I wanted to take mushrooms for a while before I actually did. Up into my trip, I mean, it had been on my mind for literally weeks. And like the final days leading up to it, I thought about it almost all day. But I had no idea where to get shrooms. All I knew is that I had this reoccurring, droning desire to do them for a very long time. And you know, as fate would have it, I ended up being in the right place at the right time. And I guess I'll just leave it at that. The opportunity presented itself and I said, hell yes, absolutely, I'm in. Christy agreed to trip sit for me, which just means she would keep an eye on me and help me out if I needed anything. Trip sitters are important because shrooms put you in a highly suggestible state, so then any negative stimulus could introduce the chance of a downward spiral. So it's best to have someone around in case they need to pull you out of a bad trip. I also knew that I wanted to be videoing and listening to music and doing things, and I just overall wasn't sure how much the shrooms would affect my ability to do those things. So just for overall safety and good measure, it was important to me to have someone I knew and trusted to be there to facilitate my journey. Before taking the shrooms, I wrote down some questions on a note card that I wanted to focus on during the trip. I made another note card for Christy with a list of music, YouTube videos, and activities we could do in case she needed to step in. So I definitely had a clear direction that I wanted this trip to go. I wanted to have my spiritual journey on my terms. I took 5 grams total. About half of that was actual whole mushroom and the rest was powder, just from me getting the bottom of the bag. I ate the whole mushrooms and then I put the powder into a glass of water and just drank it like a shot. And it didn't take long for me to start feeling the come up. We just started about 10 minutes ago and I'm already starting to feel some stuff and I'm excited. One of my biggest concerns was that I wasn't going to trip, despite taking a pretty solid dose. From what I read on the internet, the normal dose is about 2.5 grams. I took double that. And yeah, spoiler alert, it worked. It is 11:55, about 30 minutes in, and I'm feeling the come up. I've already had some mild, very mild visual hallucinations where I saw the carpet kind of being distorted, basically my vision was, and then I was laying down looking at a door similar to this one, and I was seeing this part of the door kind of look like it was coming in, like getting deeper and shallower as far as this like indention is.
So just very small changes, but I can also feel kind of euphoric and light now. And so I feel like it's coming on, and just, yeah, I'm starting to feel it. It's pretty cool. It is 12:28, so my trip has heightened quite a bit since my last check-in. So visually, I am seeing lots of distortion. I feel something. It's hard to describe, but I feel it. And you know, we've just been listening to some trippy music, some pogo, and watching some videos and stuff, and just kind of feeling good. I noticed I'm like touching my beard and my face a lot. So it's interesting. I'm definitely seeing some shit and feeling good, but I haven't seen or felt anything profound yet. But I mean, I'm only like an hour in, so I'm looking forward to how things go.
The first leg of the journey was, you know, very much what you would expect tripping wise. I was super giggly, you know, I definitely felt high, and of course was very fascinated with various, you know, sensory stimulus type things.
This feels so good.
What was that?
It really does feel good to do this. I'm also extremely nauseous right now, and I've felt like I'm on the verge of barfing kind of this whole time, but it's like the more high I feel, the more I feel like I'm gonna barf. Do I have something? I have something in my nose, don't look at it. Got him. Feels good though. Like, I'm really seeing some shit now. Again, it's nothing new. Whoa, I just saw that my dog is like, you can see her under the table. I wasn't expecting her to be there, so it freaked me out. Any kind of shapes, they're all moving, and it's just weird shit's going on, dude.
It's more than red.
What is up with this thing? Oh, wow. That's so cool.
Made our way back to the mat. It's really pressing.
This is important, guys. Wow. Yep, what can I say? I like that.
After this point, my trip took a bit of a turn. I started feeling more focused and centered. So this was the first and most mild spiritual experience I had during my trip. So I just sat there listening to meditation music, and I focused on being very open. And then I began feeling and visualizing light and energy. It was like a pull going from out of the top of my head all the way down through my body. It was so peaceful and yet kind of exhilarating at the same time. Like a true sense of just release. But you know, I consider myself to be a skeptic in general. But in this video, I'm just going to relay my experience and then give some background on what those things might be based on stuff that I've searched on the internet. And then at the end of the video, I'll reflect on everything and let you know my actual opinion and how I feel about the things that happen. But for now, I'm just gonna lay it out there, okay? Let's go. You know, I did some research, and I found out that the things that I felt are pretty spot on with what's supposed to happen when you align your chakras. So chakras are just points in your body that allow certain types of energy to flow through them. What's wild is that there's actually a chakra at the top of your head. It's called your crown chakra. And supposedly, your crown chakra allows you to connect with higher energy. It's supposed to represent spirituality and oneness. So when your crown chakra is open and all your other chakras are aligned, you're able to experience this connection of energy that flows through your body and out through the top of your head. You know, hey, where have we heard of that before? I'm just saying, it's pretty interesting. So after this, I felt extremely grounded, and I started noticing myself drawn to living things. We had a Christmas tree up in the living room at the time. And at the beginning of my trip, I was really interested in it, fascinated with like the lights and the colors and seeing, you know, crazy shit. But at this point, when I saw it again, I felt kind of disappointed. You know, kind of screwed over that it wasn't a real tree. So I like went and hung out with, my mom has some houseplants, and I got them all and I put them on the counter and I gave them water and I put them in the sunlight, and I was just like, I was just happy to be around the fucking plants. I don't know, I wanted to be around real trees though. So I went out in my backyard and just kind of looked at the trees and stuff in my neighborhood. During my time outside, I had what I consider to be the first profound realization of this trip. Standing there, looking at the trees in my neighborhood, I was clearly hallucinating, but in a very specific and like believable way. It wasn't the same as my previous hallucinations where my entire field of vision was distorted and everything was moving together. Like at this point, certain things were moving in certain ways. So it was less like looking through a kaleidoscope and more like looking through an infrared camera. But instead of colors and heat signatures, I was seeing vibrations. The trees really stood out to me because they all move this very distinct same way. The grass moves similarly, but like a little bit slower. The wood on the fence kind of did these like dipping, you know, hello. So it was almost like the more alive the things were, the faster they were going. So this brought me to the aforementioned profound realization. Everything has energy. Which, I mean, spoiler alert, that's true. It's fucking some quantum physics shit there. But yeah, everything does have energy, and maybe in my altered state, I was able to kind of see this energy in the form of vibrations. Or maybe I was just high, but it felt significant. After this, I went back in the house and meditated again.
Having trouble relaying what I'm feeling, but I just think I came close to ego death. And half of me is like kind of rolling my eyes at all this stuff, but seriously, I'm feeling some shit that maybe it's just drugs, but I don't know, man. I'm feeling some shit. Feeling connected to stuff, but also somehow disconnected from myself, if that makes sense. And of course, just understanding things in different ways, as you do when you're on shrooms. Oh, and it is 1:22. I have no concept of time, but like, when do I ever? And I'm not nauseous anymore. I'm very sleepy.
In this clip, I mentioned coming close to something called ego death. Ego death is defined as the complete loss of subjective self-identity, which basically means you stop feeling like a solitary person and instead feel as if you are part of everyone and everything around you. So here's what happened. I stood in front of the TV and started meditating again. But this time my eyes were open and I started seeing these shapes materializing in the air. It was next level shit. They looked like letters in like some kind of foreign ancient language. It was like some fucking Skyrim shit. And they would materialize in the air and kind of float like tissue paper and then press against the walls and dissolve with like bright light around them. All over and over. It was just like these letters going against the wall and like coming out really bright. And I was like, holy shit, I'm the fucking Dragonborn first road. Ah! So then pretty soon I started losing my proprioception, which is, you know, the awareness of where your body parts are in space. So that was happening and I felt myself like coming out of my own body. And at the same time, I felt like I was just expanding. So it was like I was leaving and just getting bigger. But then I kind of like came back to and snapped out of it. But after the fact, what's really interesting is Christy told me that when I was standing there, I was like leaning back with my arms up like this. And just kind of like on my tiptoes coming off the ground a little bit. Or something like that. Which I don't remember doing, so that's very interesting. So that was my little date with ego death. Throughout this whole experience, I became really empathetic and felt sort of a sense of guilt towards my dogs and like the fact that they have to just stay in the house and in the yard. So I decided to take them on a walk.
Wow. Wow. Neat. Look at these dogs.
And other than an unusual, you know, sense of calmness, I was actually just pretty much sober during the whole thing. You know, nothing was weird, nothing trippy happened. Honestly, at this point, the trip was less of something that was happening to me and more of something that I could like tap into, like an ability, like a superpower. I'm Shroom man. I just trip out when I want. But, you know, at the beginning of the trip, I don't want to say I was necessarily fighting with it, but I definitely was like trying to see certain things or make things happen. And towards, you know, after the meditation and stuff, I just told myself I have to let go. I'm just gonna let go and let this thing take me wherever it's gonna take me. And so then at this point is like when I actually kind of gained the control that I was originally struggling for or something, I don't know. But yeah, it was like I could choose to focus and then see or feel that trippy stuff. So next we decided to go for a little drive and see some nature.
We're in the car, we went for a drive. She took me down to some little kayak rapids here in town. Earlier I said I felt like I really wanted to be around nature. I felt called to it. And now I feel like I got the message it was wanting to tell me, or something weird like that, you know what I'm saying?
And this was like the heaviest experience I had during my trip. So first thing when we got in the car, Christy put on some music, and it was one of those like chill, like lo-fi hip hop, kind of the songs that I play in my vlogs. So like very mellow and laid back, but right away I was overwhelmed by that song. It was strange that in this state, you know, even someone with very intense ADHD was like overstimulated by a song. And it made me realize that we are just constantly consuming or needing some sort of entertainment or something to do all the time. And it kind of made me take a step back and think about how I kind of always put myself in a constant state of stimulation chaos. And Christy caught on pretty quick and turned it off. So it was really nice, and we just drove the rest of the way there in silence. And driving through my town on the way to the river was actually really sad for me. I noticed all of the places where, like, even though we were in town and there's like lots of, you know, concrete and development, you know, there'd be like a patch of a little bit of a field or some trees here and there or bushes. It made me deeply sad, and I just kept thinking how man has stomped all over nature, but like it still tries to survive where it can. I don't know, it just kind of like broke my heart. I felt very connected to nature. Like I could sense what it was feeling, and it literally felt like I was smothering. Like I felt so claustrophobic seeing those things. So we got to the river, and this is where I definitely had the most profound realization of my trip. Christy could tell that I wasn't in the mood to chat, so she took a walk, and I just stood by the bank, and the water was really high from recent rain, and the rapids were roaring. And I heard everything so differently. It was so clear. I could hear the water, and I could hear the birds, but I could also hear the trees and the grass and just everything that was there. And it all sounded like music. It wasn't a tune. It wasn't necessarily a pretty song, but it was just like tones that corresponded to these different parts of nature, and that all went together so nicely. It was just so neat to stand there, and I felt like I wanted to be a part of this, to be present in nature without having to do anything to it or even comment on it. I just wanted to exist in it, and that was enough. And what I realized in my time standing there, experiencing these things, is that in order to truly be content, you have to relinquish control. That so much of our struggle as humans is just our greed and our lust for power. That man feels the need to control everything, like even life itself. And by trying to control so much that we are not meant to control, we're essentially putting ourselves at war with everything, with nature, and with life itself. So that was my big breakthrough, and here's the clip that I took after that.
Oh my gosh, guys. I feel nothing but a very intense sadness. And not like within myself, but it's like seeing nature and being in nature. It honestly felt like, it was almost like I could hear it crying. And it's like every man-made thing that I'm around right now is just making me upset, and it feels wrong. Like driving down the street, seeing cars, it all feels wrong. I don't think I'm having a bad trip. I think that we as humans are really fucking up the earth and hurting nature, and it's telling us. Maybe I'm just more open to it right now.
So after this, we went back home and I decided to meditate again. And this is where shit gets really intense. This was the most significant experience of my entire trip. This is where I met God, or, my spirit guide, or my higher self, or something. Here's a clip of me talking a little bit about it.
Basically, I just laid there on the ground, reminding myself, or just thinking about being open. I felt a really strong presence. This is gonna sound so strange. I know I sound like a crazy person talking about this stuff, but this is literally what happened. I saw the color purple, a deep, deep purple, just in front of me completely, and I felt a presence, and I opened myself up, and I felt from my solar plexus right here, I felt a surge of energy, and it felt like an exchange of energy between me and this purple presence, and it was just, I felt like I was floating off the ground. I mean, I can't describe it. It was only good feelings throughout my whole body. And then I felt this presence sort of culminate, like to a peak. And I knew in that moment that I could have more of that, but I couldn't be physical and have that at the same time. And so then I felt it leave, and I kind of came back down. I feel it, right? I feel full and light and happy and peaceful. And what's crazy is reflecting on sort of the questions that I came into this trip, wanting answers for. Things like, what should I do next? Career-wise, I feel so stuck. What should I do? What's going to be fulfilling to me? And in this experience, I just kind of look at those questions, or look at my perspective coming into that as being so narrow, such a small part of something so much bigger that I never chose to look at, And now it's like I got the answers to those questions indirectly, by seeing that those questions themselves are not relevant, really. And it's just so nuts to say, but it's like I see beyond those desires that I came in with. Like it's so much bigger than that. And that's what I've learned. So I really truly feel like I have done what I wanted to do here. I felt very empty, and I was longing for something, and I knew that I needed some sort of answer, and that's what I came into this looking for. And I really feel like pretty at peace with everything. I feel like I got my answers and stuff, but I'm really, really happy with the way things went. I just feel really good.
So now I've had some time to process that experience, and I have some thoughts on it that I would like to share. First, just to clarify what happened, I felt a presence and I felt a connection to it. And there was like an exchange of energy between me and this purple entity. I had this floating sensation and an overwhelming surge of love and peace and knowledge and euphoria. And it radiated through my body like the first sip of hot coffee on a cold morning. And there really aren't words that can truly describe what I felt in that moment. So here's the thing. I'm not religious, but I was raised Southern Baptist. And they believe that in order to go to heaven, you have to pray to God and accept Jesus Christ into your soul as your Lord and Savior. And that's called being saved. So, even as a child, I didn't buy into it much. And obviously now have completely moved on from it. But there's always been something weighing on the back of my mind that has made me question what I truly believe. The devil is in my camera. He just turned my video off. I'm back. Don't worry about it. So, as I was saying, when I was 8 years old, I laid in bed and I prayed to God, knowing that I didn't want to burn for eternity. I closed my eyes and I kept repeating, I believe. Halfway trying to convince myself. But the more I said it, the more I felt it. I said it over and over. I believe, I believe, I believe. And suddenly I felt a presence. I felt like my body was rising up off the bed, like I was flying. And I was filled with an overwhelming sense of peace and euphoria. And over time, those feelings faded. And, my personal conflicts with the religion itself obviously drove me to agnosticism. But that night still trips me up. And I had never felt anything else like that until now. And what's really strange is that, during that exchange that I had with this entity, I chose to stop during that because it was like it almost communicated to me that in order to go where it was going, to know what it knows and feel that feeling, I would have to die, which was just nuts. It honestly felt like a small part of some much bigger form of energy. I don't know, I can't pretend to know what the fuck it is. My views on religion still are not changed, but fuck, maybe there's really something out there, Maybe there's something. So after this point in my trip, I was just so calm and full of peace. It was just radiating through my body. I felt so fulfilled and whole, like a new man. And I could tell at this point that the effects of the mushrooms were wearing off. And so I just went and I sat down and decided to hang out on the couch with Christy for a little while. And I started thinking about her struggles with depression and feeling lost and just things that she's gone through recently. And I just wanted so bad for her to feel that inner peace and that content that I felt in that moment. And so I just kept thinking about that and focusing on her and wanting her to be truly happy like I was. And I just kind of took her hand without saying anything, and I looked over at her and tears were welling up in her eyes. And she said that when I grabbed her hand, she just felt a sense of calm and just pure love and positive energy overwhelming her, all over her. And for a long time, we just sat there. It was really neat. Because like I said, I didn't say any of that stuff to her. She really just felt it. And that was my trip. It's still hard to say what I believe is real and what I believe was perceived, during that whole time, because all of it felt real. But there are obviously things that when I was seeing weird shit, I was like, okay, that's not real. But when I was feeling stuff that was so significant, and now looking back at these things with knowledge from the research that I've done that backs up these things that I was feeling, it's just it's hard to argue with that. I think the biggest takeaway, from this that I had was kind of the theme of control that was throughout the whole thing. I went into it with a literal list of things that I wanted to do and things that I wanted to happen and learn. And throughout it, just kind of had to learn to step back and just let the chips fall where they may and just kind of ride things out. I really do think that so much conflict comes from the illusion of control. And that is something that, since the trip I've noticed in a lot of places in my life and the lives of others. And I'm really trying to kind of keep that in mind, and it's helping. It's also made me focus more on being present in my life, to just exist without feeling the need to add anything or comment or, necessarily always have to be doing something. There was also a point in my trip where I was, we were driving back from the river, and I was just thinking about how as a kid, I was always outside in nature. I was always playing in the woods. I was always doing something, out in the world. And I would notice the seasons changing so vividly, And now it's I'm always in my office, or I'm always at work. I'm always doing something, just kind of staring at four walls. And time flies by so fast. It's like 2017 didn't even happen. And so it kind of reminded me to stop and smell the roses and get out and enjoy nature and just be a part of it and watch the world change around you sometimes and not necessarily just take time for granted so much. It also reminded me to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Like I said, coming into the trip, I had very specific questions, but leaving the trip, I got the answer to my questions, but in a much bigger and more important way. It wasn't like I got direct answers. It was like I got answers that were so much bigger that those small questions didn't even matter anymore. So it just kind of reminds me that there is a bigger picture, and that the picture is quite a bit bigger than me. And so since then, I've tried to apply these lessons that I learned into my life, and I've honestly been a lot happier. Not just from that, but other parts of my life. I've found a lot more purpose in what I'm doing, and I feel better than I've ever felt. Honestly, I've struggled with so much depression and like sleep issues for so long, but now I'm feeling the best I've ever felt. And I've been waking up at 5 a.m. every morning and going to bed at 9 p.m. and waking up because I want to, you know. It's not like I have a job where I have to clock in, you know. I do everything from home, but I'm so fulfilled now, and not because of the shrooms, but because of trying to find purpose in my life outside of just, I do this because I do this, you know? So things have gotten a lot better since then. I'm definitely out of that funk. And whether or not any of the things that happened on my trip were real or significant, it helped me. And because of that, I'm glad that I did it. So those are my thoughts on the trip. Now, I would like to give a shout out to my boy Ty Lawrence Clark from Patreon and all my lovely Patreon supporters over there. Thank you guys so much. Shirts came in this month. Everyone's been stoked about their shirts. Love seeing the pictures of everyone wearing their shirts. Let's check out Ty. He's got some cool stuff for us. Awesome possum. Thank you again to my Patreon supporters. Thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.